another episode of the Unwanted Opinions podcast. Jay and I are back here on a Wednesday about 5:45 Eastern Time. Got some Rockets and Pacers action going right now. That's going on. Jay and I are going to talk to you guys about this Big Ten and Pac-12 shutting down all fall sports for all of those major universities to Power 5 conferences. We'll give you our thoughts on all of that. Also, we're going to briefly touch on some NBA stuff, particularly Dame Lillard. I mean, that dude's just been on an absolute tear for really since the bubble started. I mean, that dude's just been on one and had feuds with PG and Pat Bev, so we'll get into that. But, Jay, how are you, man?
Not good, dude. Not good. They canceled the Big Ten season as of now. I'm not happy about it whatsoever. You know, I look forward to every single year watching Ohio State play.
Jay's got his Ohio State pullover run right now.
Yeah,
since you guys can't see him.
We were working on a little video action. Didn't go as we planned.
Yeah, we'll try to figure that out in a couple days, hopefully.
Yeah, but nonetheless, as of now, it stands the Big Ten season is canceled. And I have so many questions. I haven't really heard them say anything. I just keep hearing them try and say it's for player safety, and I'm not buying that whatsoever. I don't understand how SEC doctors and Big 12 doctors and ACC doctors are all saying it's possible, there's a way, it can be done, it's safe, and yet so quick and drastically, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 came out and said, nope, we're not doing it. It's too risky. To me, it's bullcrap because I don't think there's any safer place than tell me a safer place than on the football team where you're under 24-hour surveillance, you have access to all the medical facilities, and you're constantly being tested for COVID. You're one.
If you want a safer place, I'll give you one. Orlando at the bubble.
Okay, well, they don't have a bubble there. But they're basically all going to be inside their own bubble.
You asked to name you a safer place, so.
I don't know. To me, I saw where they polled, I don't even know who it was. It was just like this poll that polled like over 800 students, and it said, would you plan to return to like campus if you're allowed to this fall? Basically resume your classes at campus rather than at home. And 76% said that they would want to return to campus. I believe fall semester kids are going to go back to school. So how can you deem it safe for kids to go back to campus, interact with each other in class, interact with each other and passing outside? You know they're going to have parties. You know they're going to be interacting in the frats and the dorms, but yet it's not safe for the student athletes to be under 24-hour surveillance and playing football. It doesn't make sense to me.
I do think that's something that they considered because they are afraid of 18, 19, 20-year-old kids going to parties and interacting with all those other people on campus. Like you said, if they're on campus, it doesn't seem like it's any less safe than going to football practice or playing. I mean, to me, I don't know. It's very similar to both. Like that's just here in town. I mean, that's an argument where I know some people who are willing to let their kids go to football practice and baseball practice, but they don't want to send their kids to school. So it's just there's both sides of it for sure. But like you said, you're just mad about it, and I'm mad about it too. I mean, I love watching. I'm not as big of a college football fan as you are, Jay, but that's just because you have a diehard team and you really care about if they win or lose. I just like to watch it because I like watching football, and it just didn't seem like the Big Ten tried very hard to come up with a plan. Because you see, I just saw today the Big 12, for all their fall sports that are high contact, which is soccer, volleyball, and football, they're testing their athletes 3 times a week. And I know that those schools have a lot of money, but so do Big Ten schools. I mean, all those Big Ten schools are major universities all throughout the country. And they could have easily paid for this testing for these kids to try and get them out there. They're trying to say that they're going to do this in the spring. There's no fucking guarantee that they're going to get this done in the spring. I mean, they just immediately think that this thing's going to be gone come March, April, and May. It's not going to happen. So I just didn't think that they tried hard enough to get something that worked for everyone.
No, it's like the 12 presidents of the 12 Big Ten schools just made this decision based out of fear.
Yeah,
To
it's what
me,
it
I
seems like.
believe they were afraid of the liability they would be carrying if something
Hmm.
were to happen. And honestly, they could be a little bit afraid of the player unionization, where you see players speaking out like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and taking this route like they want their voices to be heard. And I honestly believe they're scared of giving the players that voice. How can 12 presidents of these universities decide this so fast when I've listened to different athletic directors, I've listened to head coaches' press conferences where the ADs were basically saying, like, we had a plan and we were working on a plan. I was under the belief that we were going to have at least until the beginning of September to wait this thing out and see what other conferences do. And out of nowhere, it's just like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 just jumped the gun and said, nope, we're
Hmm.
out, instead of giving it any second thought or trying anything. Um, I don't get it. The spring football, what? Yeah, like you said, what are you going to start in March? I heard
Yeah.
Ryan Day, the coach of Ohio State, say if they're going to do spring football, it's going to have to be started in like January and have a shortened season, because how are you going to start the season in March, end the season in like June or July, and then turn right around and have another season next fall?
Yeah.
It just doesn't
Or
make sense.
and the kids that are going to get drafted, I mean, they're basically going immediately because Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa. I mean, these guys produce these universities produce NFL players left and right, and a lot of them that are draft eligible or shit. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the NFL will allow these kids say, hey, you can skip your junior year and come play in the league, or who knows what's going to happen. I mean, there could be different things like this. I saw they're also were willing to give up willing to potentially give 6-year eligibility for players. I'm just like, damn. I mean, you're going to
There's
every
just so many
extreme not to
unanswered
play.
questions. Like, is the NFL, will they push the draft back if they have an early spring season next year for those kids that didn't get to play this fall? Is the 2021 season going to start immediately after the spring football that we're talking about? Do the kids lose eligibility if they, like the Big Ten players that aren't able to play this year because they're deciding not to have a season? Do those kids lose a year of eligibility? And then let's say they don't lose a year of eligibility. Now they have an extra year of scholarship. What about the 2021 kids that are already committed under scholarship, that the school is only given an X amount of scholarships per year, like 85? Well, now all the kids that they thought were leaving next year now have this extra year of eligibility and are under scholarship. Does that get to take away from next year's recruiting class? It's just a bunch of shit. I don't know what's going to happen. There's so many things that are about to go wrong and go haywire because the Big Ten and the Pac-12, to me, jump the gun. And if the SEC is still able to go on with football and have a plan and show a way, it is going to look like the biggest joke for the Big Ten and the Pac-12 for
Well,
opting out.
and I mean, this has nothing to do with the Big Ten, but I mean, just college football in general. Like, what about all these bowl games? What about the college football playoff? Is there? I wouldn't be surprised if they cancel the college football playoff. I really wouldn't. I mean, because you're going to have 3 conferences competing for it because you don't have the Big Ten. You don't have the Big 12 or the Pac 12. You may not have some of the mid majors that, I mean, normally they don't make a run at this, but I mean, sometimes they do, like UCF did a few years ago. I can't even think of a couple other teams that have, but that's where you get into a lot of these issues with that and like all these sponsors that put in money to these bowl games. I mean, they're just going to immediately pull their money out because there's not going to be as many teams that can play. So there's more. The university is losing even more money. It's strange. I mean, I get the liability issue because you've got a lot of kids on this team. I mean, it's different than. That's why you hear a lot of people comparing it to what the NBA. You just can't. You can't compare it to that because there's like 100 kids on a college football roster. I mean, they're doing this a lot. They're busing these kids. They're flying them. They're putting them in hotels. Have to feed them all. It's hard to do because you have just such a bigger group and you're not all in one area. It's just, I don't know. I'm sure there was something that they could do to play. But again, like you said, they acted out of fear, and I can't really blame them 100% on canceling the season. It sucks for a lot of those athletes, but
I just think they jumped the gun. Why'd you cancel it so fast? Wait it out and figure out a plan, because it's so frustrating, because there's so many kids relying on this that I don't know how many tens of thousands of scholarship athletes there are, but a lot of them believe they can go pro, and this might have been their season to be the next Joe Burrow. Before last year, Joe Burrow was looked at as possibly undraftable. He had a horrible season the previous year.
Yeah, or like a 6th-round pick or something like that. Yeah.
And then just skyrockets in one season and becomes a multimillionaire in one season. That could have been the opportunity for so many of these kids, or maybe they believe that, and it's all being taken away from them without their input or their say. Because if you go around and listen to all the players, they're all wanting to play.
Yeah, and you've seen so many of them just say that we want to play. Yeah.
And if you don't want to play, grant them eligibility to come back the next year if they are fearful and maybe they have different circumstances, like Micah Parsons or Rondale Moore or someone, or the receiver from Bateman from Minnesota. I know everybody has unique circumstances, and if you do not feel comfortable playing, you should not be penalized. This is a wild time. This is something like we've never seen before. Grant them their eligibility to come back. Maybe give them that 5th or 6th year. But all the players that want to play and are standing up saying, I want to play. And I mean, if you look at the actual numbers, like men between 18 and 22 or whatever that is, healthy, in good shape, the statistics show that they are so unlikely to be affected very much at all by COVID, even if they tested positive, that the health risks are so minimal. I don't know if you make them sign a waiver or what you want to do going forward, but if all these kids want to play and all these coaches want to coach and the ADs are on board and they have a plan and doctors approve of the plan and say it is okay to go forward, how can 12 presidents just come in and be like, nope, we're not doing it. We're just shutting the season down. I hate it so much.
Well, Ian, I mean, Jay, you and I, we don't talk really about we don't get it. We don't talk about college volleyball or soccer or on any of those other sports too, but it's affecting all of those because it's fall sports. It's not just football. I mean, football is obviously one of the main drivers of these universities, how they make money, and it's what people talk about on TV and whatnot. But it also sucks for those other athletes that don't get to play or that may have to try and play in the spring or want another extra year of eligibility. But it also gets to those kids that, I mean, if you're the 60th guy on Iowa and you just really love playing for Iowa, but you know that you're not going pro and you don't want to try, this may be your last opportunity because you just may say, fuck it, I'm leaving. I'm going to go get a real job and just say I'm done. Yeah. So some people may have played their last down of football, like a 5th-year senior who was a walk-on that just, like I said, is just really proud to wear that jersey. I mean, that sucks for those kids too. That you don't really hear about those guys. I mean, you don't, but that's just going to be it for them.
What's your thoughts on teams like a Nebraska or like an Ohio State that have vocally come out and said, we want to play, we will do whatever is necessary? Or because I was kind of depressed this morning because I caught an interview on the Big Ten Network where they had Gene Smith, Ohio State's AD, on, and he was basically saying, I think he got caught up, honestly, because at the very beginning of the interview, they asked him, like, are you disappointed? And he came out and was like, yeah, we're disappointed. We wanted to play. We still want to play, yada, yada, yada. And then kind of backtracked when the media, being the media, kind of was like, hey, what you said earlier, does that mean that you kind of don't agree with what the president decided to do? And of course, he can't be like, yeah, I hate what the fuck they did. They didn't really give us anything.
Yeah.
No, not what I meant. We want to play, but now we've been getting basically the history of COVID, and we have more awareness, blah, blah, blah. He backtracked, gave the solid answer that he's supposed to give. Well, Ryan Day, the head coach, had a press conference today and kind of cracked that door back open when he was like, hey, it's still a fluid situation. I know you guys might have caught Gene Smith at a bad time, or where he had just talked to them, but I talked to him this morning, and it's still ongoing. We're still coming up with a plan. We would like to proceed forward. We want to play basically any way possible. If there's a way, we're going to explore it. So I don't know if that means if the Big Ten basically says we're not playing, which they basically have, maybe Ohio State becomes an independent. Maybe Ohio State tries to join another conference just for this season. What is your thoughts on any of the teams from the Pac-12 or the Big Ten deciding, well, you guys said we couldn't play, but we have a plan and we have doctors that say we can. We're going to go ahead and we're going to link up with the SEC, or we're going to link up with the Big 12 and figure out a way to play this year.
Hey, if they want to play, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, I really am. I'm all for trying it. And I mean, like we've talked about with baseball's trying it, the NFL is going to try it in September and see what they can do. I know college football's a little bit different because the NFL, that's their job. But I mean, if that university gets accepted to go play in the ACC or the SEC or the Big 12, go for it. I mean, the more the merrier, honestly. I mean, if you're willing to play and you want to take the risk of doing it and you think you guys are taking all the proper precautions to be able to successfully get a season, then do it. Because I don't think that the Big Ten, or if they want to play in a different conference this year, it's not like the Big Ten is going to try and kick out that university because they need that money.
That's my thought is the Big Ten needs Ohio State more than Ohio State needs the Big Ten.
Absolutely.
And there's other teams that are the same way in the Pac-12 or the Big Ten itself. Nebraska's kind of a newcomer because they were late to the game. They only got in the Big Ten, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, something like that.
But to me, Ohio State has a chance right now to make a statement like, look, we're playing football. Other teams are playing football. Now, if the NCAA comes down and basically deems no college football for anybody.
Which is still a possibility.
Yeah, I'll stick my middle finger up to them regardless. But if they deem it that no one can play college football, okay, I get it. But if other conferences play football this year, I think Ohio State right now has a chance to make a statement and say, look, we're going for it. Big Ten, you didn't want to be on board. We'll figure it out because, like you just said, the Big Ten is not kicking Ohio State out of their conference.
No. I really don't think they would kick any of them out just based off of the uncertain times. I mean, if one of those teams wants to go play in a different conference this year, and then that gets to a whole other topic of, are those conferences going to allow someone else to join in because they've made their schedules already, so they would have to rework all of that. So
it seems like all the schedules are going to have to be reworked anyways.
And it might, because again, if there's 17 guys on one of the teams that test positive that week, I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to try and play and just play with your third string guys, which may happen, or are you just going to cancel that week altogether? And there's very little leeway of where to make these games up throughout the year.
It'll be very interesting. I think we'll learn a little more over the next couple of weeks. Like, I know I've been talking a lot about Ohio State, but it's just because what I follow the closest.
But, when you say Ohio State, I mean, you're almost talking at the Big Ten in a whole, really, because obviously they're the biggest brand and they've been one of the most vocal teams saying that they want to play. Harbaugh's also been out there. Scott Frost has the head coach at Nebraska, who you mentioned.
Penn State, they've said they want to play.
Yeah. I think a lot of these schools want to play. Obviously, like you said, the presidents, they really are just looking out for people because, again, I mean, who knows what could happen? And I mean, there's a very good chance that if one of these kids, God forbid, were to get this and die, I mean, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yeah, I see that from the perspective. I just truly believe they jumped the gun.
They should have taken
that into consideration.
Because I agree.
More.
I don't think they tried hard enough to get an actual plan together. It's like what baseball did, and they're seeing what baseball did. Baseball didn't have a fucking plan, and they just tried to cram in 60 games, and every day everybody
what's
playing.
Happening with St. Louis.
So and I mean, you saw that. The Cardinals, I mean, their players, they just went to a casino and one of the games, and a lot of them tested positive for it. So that's another thing they got to worry about. Like I said, they got to worry about 18, 19, 20-year-old kids not going to parties with 75 people there in a small house that's meant for 5 people. Because Jay, you and I both know we've been to parties like that where there's that many people and you're like chest to chest with everyone.
Yep. Rubbing all day long, just trying to get through people.
Yeah. So those are things they got to worry about. So like I said, I don't blame them for that aspect, but it sucks to see it. It really does.
Like I said, it'll be very interesting over the next couple days, couple weeks to see what transpires, because the football season was supposed to start very beginning of September, and that's only 3 weeks away.
Less than a month away. I think 2 days ago we were officially 1 month away from the first NFL game. And college football is usually the weekend right before the NFL starts. We'll just see. I don't know. I mean, like I said, there's still a good possibility that there's no college sports until January. Fuck, I don't know.
If they come up with a plan to make all college football start in January, February, I will be more on board with it, because honestly, that'd be pretty cool. You get to see the NFL. That would be cool. And then after the NFL, you get to see college football.
Well, because, I mean, the NFL's done in February. So you'd go basically straight from the Super Bowl to the middle of the college football season.
I'll be a little upset if some conferences play in fall and then others like the Big Ten play in the spring. I'll be the most upset if some conferences don't play at all or there's no football altogether.
Yeah. So we'll see in the next coming days, but it's just it's not a fluid situation.
Hey, Ryan Day said it was, so I'm holding out hope.
Well, he can say what he wants. I know he's just going to be very optimistic because he wants to play, so yeah.
I truly believe.
I wasn't that optimistic about college football. I've been saying that to you for a while.
This might be just me trying to be optimistic, but I believe if a conference plays fall ball, Ohio State will play as well.
Okay. We'll see. Again, like I said, Jay's wearing his Ohio State pullover, so yeah. All right, Jay, let's move on to just some NBA stuff pretty quickly. We'll spend about 20-ish minutes on that. We'll get out of here after that. But I just wanted to we'll talk about Dame Lillard here in a second and what the Blazers are doing, because it's just damn impressive. But I also wanted to ask you some of your thoughts on a few things that LeBron has said, because the Lakers, as a lot of people are knowing, they've had a lot of games where they've struggled. They're only 3-4 in the bubble. They're 20th in net rating. They're 21st in points per possession, and they're hitting less than 28% from threes, which is the worst since the bubble started. But he was talking about how it's been weird adjusting to the bubble. He's really been, I mean, he's a big spokesman of the league. I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel this way. They just don't speak up about it, how it's hard to adjust to the bubble. It's a little more difficult than he thought it was going to be. He misses his family a lot more than he thought he would. I mean, obviously all these guys miss their families, but he's been talking about it, and it's just, he's talked about the arenas, how they're darker. It's weird with no fans. I mean, just as a whole, what are your thoughts on all of that, for just more off the court stuff really than on the court stuff?
I think people had an idea of how it was going to be, but didn't really know how it was going to affect you until you actually played the games in the arena with no fans. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, I never took lighting into consideration when it came to them playing the games. Yeah, I bet you do miss your family a shit ton. Yeah, you probably have the idea going in like, okay, it's just going to be like a long break, but it'll be over quick. I mean, I'm going to be playing basketball. I'm going to be focused on the season. I'll be able to get through it. But then when it really comes down to it, yeah, you probably do have a lot of downtime because you are quarantined. You can't really do much inside the bubble because you're trying to stay away from the positive test of corona so you can keep playing and keep your team moving forward. So, yeah, you don't really think about that beforehand, but then you get in there and it's like you have a lot of downtime where you're like, I would love to have them here. What are my kids doing? What I want to be hanging out with them. And so I do see how that could have a mental effect on the game, but I am still a believer that come playoff time, Lakers and LeBron are going to kick it into gear and really figure it out. But yeah, as you mentioned, I think he says a lot of what other players think but don't say.
Yeah.
and he's not afraid to say it.
And I mean, literally, if this guy sneezes, I mean, it's on the every front page of a newsstand.
Yeah, I don't think he's using it as an excuse. I think
and
he's
I don't
just
either.
legitimately telling you how he feels.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's a huge. If you just follow him on Instagram or whatever, I mean, he's huge in his family. He talked about right before the bubble. This is the longest he's not seen his mom, because you all know his story. He's grew up single parent, never knew his dad. His mom raised him. They weren't very wealthy, and they weren't wealthy at all. They were extremely poor, actually. But anyways, I mean, so he's just got some stuff, and he's willing to talk about a lot of this. So it's just, like you said, it's tough. I mean, it would be tough for anybody to do this. It's just, but the only thing that is any sort of alarming with them is just them not being able to knock down open shots. And they're getting a ton of open looks. But once they start knocking those down, I think it'll be they'll have a little bit more rhythm on offense. And also, they're not the only team that's struggling. They're the team that gets talked about the most because they have LeBron. But the Clippers are also 3-3. They've had losses to the Nets and the Suns, and they just don't have much team chemistry either. I mean, they're supposed to be this juggernaut that's never supposed to lose, but they get a pass for almost everything that they do. It's just absurd. The Bucks are 3-4. One of those wins come against the Wizards, who haven't won a single game in the bubble. They basically sent 14-year-olds on that team because nobody came, and they almost lost to Boston. They almost lost to Miami without Jimmy Butler. The Nuggets are 3-4. OKC's 3-3. Utah's 2-5. As much as people have raved about the Mavericks and the Heat are only 3-3. The Mavericks are 3-4. I mean, a lot of these teams, these juggernaut super teams that are the title favorites, haven't been very good in the bubble. A lot of them are still trying to figure out who they are. You're seeing a lot of these flaws on these teams right now because they haven't played in 4 months. Everybody was rolling in mid-March, and then you shut down for 4 months. It's hard to bring that all back. I mean, some of the teams the Suns are 7-0 and kicking dick. The Spurs are 5-2. The Nets are 5-2. I mean, some of these teams that you didn't think were going to do shit in the bubble are out here playing harder than anybody. And you see some of these title favorites.
But I think that's because they have to.
Sometimes they care and sometimes they don't.
I believe the better, like the Lakers, none of these are must-win games. They've already secured the number 1 seed. Same with Milwaukee. I think they're more experimenting now. You saw LeBron take a game off where he had played like all the regular season games. What did he say was hurting?
They listed him as his sore right groin, which is the injury he had last year.
So do I believe he had a sore right groin? No, I don't. I just think he wanted to take a game off because he can, and they know they've already locked up the 1 seed. I believe the Clippers are trying to work in different rotations, see what's working. Their guys are kind of resting a little bit. Milwaukee, Giannis is missing some games I believe for rest, just to get ready for the playoffs. I believe the teams that are already in the playoffs at the top of the food chain, they're kind of just coasting right now and not taking it as seriously. I don't know if I believe one way or another, if that's good or bad, or if they should or shouldn't do that. And I believe the teams that are at the bottom are really fighting to get in, which they should. So I think you're going to see a little bit different basketball from the teams at the top once the playoffs actually start. I still believe that the Clippers and the Lakers are going to come out of the West, so they're not really that concerned about right now. I think they're the 2 best teams, with the Rockets as the 3rd best. The East, I told you last week that I've changed. I think the Raptors are coming out of the East. I think they're the best fucking team in that conference. There's nothing that they do bad. They do basically everything well. And you see them playing hard every night. I know they barely just beat the Bucks without Giannis, but I don't know. I just think the Raptors
I think they rested Kyle Lowry too, so they didn't have
he did not play.
They didn't have all their guns either, but it's just the reason why I bring up the flaws for all these top teams is because this is another area where I've said it a million times, and I never have a problem saying with it. Kevin Durant ruined the NBA for 3 years when he went to Golden State. And everyone expects the championship team to be flawless like the Warriors were. I mean, there was 3 straight years. If KD doesn't get hurt, or even if Klay doesn't get hurt, the Warriors win 3 straight chips. I don't care. I mean, you can say what you want about the Raptors doing their thing, and Kawhi was awesome, and that Raptors team is really good, but they weren't beating the Warriors with a healthy squad. It just wasn't happening. and they could just turn it on at any given point. And that's what you expect out of a great team. But you're not seeing that but that's what makes the NBA so great right now, is that there's a lot of teams that can come and win this thing. That's what makes it so perfect. But again, that's like I said, that's where you expect the best team to just blow everybody out by 30 points a night. But that's just not going to happen because a lot of these teams are so evenly matched. It's just going to come down to who hits your open shots better, who defends at a higher level, who wants it more at times. It's not, okay, we don't have to play as hard for the first 3 quarters, but if we're down 8 going into the fourth, we've got KD, Steph, and Clay, and we can just hit 7 threes in a row and win the game. So it's just, and I think it's like you said, they're playing with a lot of stuff. I mean, the Clippers, I mean, they've sat guys every now and then, and they're trying to get some deep rotations. They're seeing who wants to be in this rotation for the playoffs. Like the Lakers have played Talen Horton-Tucker, who hadn't scored a point until 2 nights ago or whenever it was in his NBA career. I mean, Markieff and Deion Waiters, who they just signed. So it's weird because the better teams, they just aren't. It just doesn't seem like any of them are taking this as seriously. And some of it's alarming, but other points of it's just like, well, I guess we will see if they really lock in. I mean, the playoffs I think start next Monday. It's not that far away.
Yeah, I mean, I love what the Suns are doing, but I think that right there is kind of proof in the pudding that, yeah, they're undefeated right now in the bubble, but do you even expect them to win 2 playoff games?
Well, that's it. They have to get in first.
That's what I'm saying. If they get in, they run the table, they get in the playoffs, they run into the Lakers, I look at it as a sweep.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just – because right now, talking about that 8 seed, I mean, the Blazers are 5-2 in the bubble so far. And Dame Lillard just put in back-to-back 50-point games, scored 50 and then 61. And, I mean, this comes after he missed those 2 free throws against the Clippers, and Pat Bev was doing the Dame time and pointing to his wrist, and then they were taking shots at each other on Instagram, and then Damian Lillard's sister was taking shots at Patrick Beverley, and I think Paul George's girlfriend was taking shots at Dame Lillard on social media and whatnot. So, but
then and then Skip Bayless are going back.
Skip Bayless is going at it with Damian Lillard, but I love it. I think it's great for the game. I mean, you get these guys. I mean, and Damian Lillard right after the game was like, "I sent Paul George home. I sent Patrick Beverley home." He's like, "That's why they're talking about me, because they know how it feels to get sent home by me." So, and then he just was like, all right, fuck this. I'm pissed. I'm going out and putting 50 and 60 in back-to-back games. I mean, he's absolutely carrying the Blazers. I mean, they've got
Nurkic had an off night the other night, and Dame goes for 61.
Yeah.
McCollum had a hurt back, barely could play.
He's got a fracture in his back, which is huge.
And Dame figures out a way to play it. Do I believe the Blazers, when all players are healthy, have a fantastic roster? I believe they're a little top-heavy, but yeah, I think their starting 5 and maybe their 6th and 7th guy are right there at the top of the league with talent, but they can never seem to put it together. And it seems like right now Dame is just putting the team on his back and saying, let's go. And I think he got a lot of criticism before the bubble started because he was on the fence about going to the bubble, because at that time, I think people forget, the NBA didn't really have a plan. So his team was not guaranteed to make the playoffs. So he kind of assumed, I'm going there taking a risk for nothing. Whereas now he knows he's playing for something, and you see he just wants to win, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get his team there. And I love it. I like Dame as a player. I like the way he carries himself.
He's become one of my top 5 favorite players in the league.
Yeah, he's not afraid of anybody. I mean, my nephew just sent me a video on Twitter where Kobe was talking about him when he first entered the league as a rookie, and Kobe was like, that boy's serious. I mean, I don't know how many points he put up on the Lakers that game, but he was taking Kobe to school. He wasn't afraid of the moment. He's never been afraid of the moment. And if this Blazers team gets in, they're going to be fun to watch.
I think they're getting in. Well, and I mean, I just want to, first of all, when Pat Bev and Pat Bev, I mean, that's all that dude does. I mean, all he does is troll. I mean, he is the loudest 7-point average player in the NBA history. I mean, that dude acts like he's walking out there like he's putting up 50, 60 points like Damian Lillard. I mean, he's not even in the same fucking league as Damian Lillard. Yeah, I mean,
Not
that's
even
just what he does.
close.
And Paul George is a fantastic player. You know how I feel about him, Jay. I mean, but when his playoff resume has clunkers of like 5 points, 7 points, he hasn't made out of the first round since 2014, he doesn't have a lot of room to ask Damian Lillard what he's done, because to their respective careers, I think they've both been to the conference finals 2 times, or Paul George's been there twice and Damian Lillard's been there once. Neither of them were able to really carry a team, and I loved what Lillard said to him. He said, when the going gets tough, you just run and go to a different team, because Paul George's been on 3 teams in 3 years now. So it's just like, come on, man. Like, know who you are before you do this. And then apparently Paul George reached out to Dame Lillard and apologized to clear the air, and Damian Lillard still told him he was sorry for what his sister said, but he was like, he's like, I'm not backing down from what I said to you, though.
Yeah. I love what Damian's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the true guys that hasn't went to another team. He had the opportunity and chose to stay in Portland. And I think he's going to do whatever he can to bring Portland a championship. Whether that'll happen, I don't know.
It's very
how many
unrealistic.
players want to go to Portland?
But I mean, you
I
were
like
talking
what he
about
stands
them
for.
getting this 8th seed. I mean, they just moved into 8 right now. They just surpassed Memphis, because Memphis has been like 1-6 in the bubble so far. They've been awful. They've been terrible. They're just, I mean, I don't think they have a shot. Phoenix, I mean, I think if Phoenix wins and Memphis loses tomorrow, and the Blazers win, it'll be Portland versus Phoenix in the play-in tournament for that 8th seed, and that'll be a lot of fun, because they're 2 of the hottest teams right now. And
Portland
the bubble
doesn't have a chance to get to 7, do they?
No, they do not.
I didn't think so.
I just wanted to ask you this, because of how hard the Blazers have had to go and how many minutes Damian Lillard is putting on his body. Do you think that will, and there's also a chance that he has to play in a play-in tournament, which the play-in tournament's actually already guaranteed. So he'll at least have to play 1 game for a play-in tournament to try and get in. That'll be an extra game than anybody else has played, and he hasn't had the opportunity to rest much. For playing this many games in so many days, do you think that'll have any effect on his body going into the playoffs? Because he's, like we said, basically carrying this team, because they're a horrible defensive team, and all they do is just outscore you. I don't know the track record for little guards having to carry a team for so long. There's not a very good track record over NBA history of guards being able to do that. So I just worry about him wearing down.
I don't think it's going to be so much of them wearing down, because, one, I think he's running on a lot of adrenaline right now. I think he's out to prove a few people wrong, Skip Bayless, Paul George, all them. But the bottom line is he's still going to be in that 8-9 seed playing game, and then regardless run into the Lakers in the first round, and I just don't see them beating the Lakers. So I don't think he's going to be playing too many extra games, and it's just he can't carry that team over the AD and LeBron.
No, and they are absolutely have nobody to guard AD and LeBron. I mean, you look at it the other way.
It's a horrible matchup for
the
them.
Lakers don't have anybody to really to stop Damian Lillard, but who does? And that fact, I mean, nobody. But that's probably the worst matchup for the Blazers, because of the 2 forward spots that the Lakers have, where that's their 2 most dominant players. But I mean, in a normal season, like you said, if they weren't injured all year long, they're probably fighting right around where OKC, Utah, and Houston and Denver are, anywhere from 3 to 6, I believe, because they're better than a normal 8 seed. I mean, they may be the best 8 seed in NBA history, not based off of record, but based off of roster and talent and who they've got. But if the Lakers have to go through Portland, Houston, and the Clippers, and then either the Bucks, Raptors, or the Celtics in the NBA title, I mean, that may be one of the hardest runs in NBA history that I can remember, if they do all of that.
And somebody will still find a way to criticize.
For sure. I mean, you'll hear it. Oh, it's a bubble title. That's the asterisk. I think a lot of people are going to say that regardless of who wins, but mainly if the Lakers win, for sure.
Agreed.
Last thing on the NBA before we go, Jay, I wanted to tell you, I saw today Russell Westbrook has a strained right quad, and he's not going to play. He's not playing tonight, and he's also not going to play in their last game. and he's going to be reevaluated before the playoffs. I don't know how serious this injury is, but that's a huge blow to the Rockets if they don't have Russ.
It is, but gut feeling, I think he's going to be fine, and he's going to find any way he can to play. I think that's just who he is.
I do too. And speaking of Houston, they're losing right now to the Pacers with 48 seconds left to go in the game. They're down 2 now with 27 seconds. But if he's out for a while, I mean, Houston, I mean, it's a big loss for him. I mean, obviously that's your second best player, and he's been really good since they went to the small ball lineup, just attacking guys off the dribble. He stopped taking a lot of stupid threes, and they just got Eric Gordon back, so they were just going to be finally the full team that they thought they were going to be when they traded for Robert Covington. But that's a huge loss if they don't have Russell Westbrook back. Like I said, I think he's going to try and play because that's just who he is. But
yep, I agree.
If he's limited, that hurts them a lot.
For sure, but I still think they'd be able to win the first-round matchup without him.
OKC will be tough, depending if they get Schroeder back or not.
I'm not sold on them in the playoffs.
If they get Schroeder, they're a pretty good team.
Pretty good, but I still think the Rockets are better.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also, the Rockets just, they shoot like 63s a game, so there's a chance they go cold for 2 weeks. I don't know, but
they do live and die by the three. I'll give you that.
Yeah, like I said, we'll definitely talk a lot more about the NBA when the playoffs start and all those matchups when we find out what they are. Because, like I said, the last games of the season are on Friday. Then that play-in game with most likely the Blazers and the Suns, or Blazers Spurs, whoever it's going to be. I think it's the Saturday, Sunday, or something like that. I believe those are the 2 days that they are. So we'll find out a lot more in the next couple of days because these 8 seeding games are almost done, man. It went by
almost
quickly.
The playoffs.
Yeah. It went by really fast. But we've seen some good basketball. We've seen some bad basketball. It's kind of been all up and down. Your boy Zion Williamson didn't look too great in all the games that he played.
But you know who did?
Who's that?
Bull.
That's just your dude on 2K. He's way too good in that game.
Hey, you're seeing why now when they're giving him minutes.
All right. Jade, you got anything else to add? Man, get out of here.
No, I don't, man. Let's get out of here.
All right.
We got to figure out that video.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. But as always, please subscribe to the Unwanted Opinions podcast wherever you get us. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, rate, review. Also, catch us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Unwanted Opinions with Nick and Jay. You can contact us via email, unwantedopinionspodcast@gmail.com. Many ways to listen to us, get our content, reach out to us, ask us questions, comments, whatever. We're here.
You nailed it. Until next time.
Until next time.